when he first took over. Like now they're making such a point to bring in leaders that know Aaron Glenn. He's calling the defense now. He's taking a bigger lead in certain areas where he kind of delegated to his staff. Rich, it almost feels like a lot of their personnel moves and decisions they made from a coaching standpoint, it almost feels like it's what he should have done in year one. The problem is the 3-14 season happened, and the fact of the matter is he's going to have to win way more than just 3 games if he's even here now for 2027.
Yeah, it's a good point, Jake. And one of the interesting comments he made on Tuesday morning, he was talking about Demario Davis and Minkah Fitzpatrick and David Onyemata, all the older type guys that he brought in. And his quote, it kind of jumped out at me at the time, not as much as the Promised Land quote, but he said, we're bringing in a certain level of adult. And so that to me, that stood out to me. That's basically saying what we talked about last week right here on the show was I felt that there was just an immaturity level, a lack of connectivity on last year's defense. And when he said bring in a certain kind of adult, the Demario Davises and the Onyematas of the world, that was significant to me.
I think that we underrate, even though we all know it. Rich, you live it every day, literally every day. And obviously, Jake, you and I talk about it pretty much every day on some level. I just think that we're kind of obscuring, not even intentionally, just how broken the Jets' home has been. I mean, to get to the Promised Land, you've got to at least construct a viable bridge. That's not going to collapse the first step that you take on it. So you've got to get adults. You've got to get rid of, and they get rid of some people that have been there for a long time. To turn the page and get the Jets, before you can be great, you've got to be functional. And I understand we've been waiting a long time, and trust me, I'm getting impatient as well. But let's not lose sight of the magnitude of this rebuild. It's the Jets.
Yeah,
100%.
It's a massive job. And I was talking to Keyshawn Johnson earlier today. And of course, he's a little biased because Aaron Glenn was his teammate. He loves the guy. He wants him to succeed. And he made a good point. And it just goes back to what Jake said a couple of minutes ago. He goes, no matter who the coach is, he goes, name me a first-year coach without a quarterback who succeeded. He goes, and I agree with him. Ultimately, I mean, the coach's success is directly tied to the level of quarterback play he gets. Mm-hmm. And last year, the quarterback play was way down here, as we know. So let's not, get him a quarterback and let's see what kind of coach he is.
So, Rich, to your point on that, and that's fair, where I struggle is because, like with Robert Saleh, for example, I know that he was the head coach. Joe Douglas was in charge of the personnel. Like, I can't just blame Robert Saleh for Zach Wilson being horrible. But with Justin Fields last year, Aaron Glenn's the one who said, I signed him. He's never been coached properly. We're going to let him play quarterback. He's the one who hired a first-time offensive coordinator in Tanner Engstrand, who was supposed to be the guy to unlock Justin Fields, who got benched at 4-2 by a Hall of Fame coach in Mike Tomlin. So, it's just tough for me to be like, yeah, he didn't have a quarterback when so many of the decisions, that was the biggest one, but so many of the other decisions also were just so bad that first year that kind of leads to the conversation about, well, is Mougey now more involved in that area? It's just tough to forget how wrong they were with Fields. And then you hear Glenn saying, well, Geno Smith's going to lead us to the Promised Land after he anointed Fields as this guy that hadn't been coached properly.
Well, I don't know about you. I mean, he definitely overhyped Justin Fields last year, but I think we're all knowledgeable football observers. I mean, I wasn't really falling for that. I mean, Justin Fields, we saw what he had done his previous 4 years. So, I think no one was, at least I didn't buy into the hype that all of a sudden he was going to develop into this really good quarterback.
Did you think he'd be as bad as he was, though?
What?
Did you think he'd be as bad as he was? Because say whatever you want about Fields, he had never played that poor since his rookie year in Chicago.
Well, I don't think he was well coached last year. I think they coached him they got him so freaked out about committing turnovers that he was afraid to throw the ball down the field. One thing about Geno Smith, and Aaron Glenn made this point on Tuesday, Geno will take chances. He will push the ball downfield. Now, sometimes it results in a pick. So he had 17 last year, but he will try the tight window throw and give his players a chance. Justin Fields was like a mannequin in the pocket. He was even afraid to run toward the end of the year.
Yeah.
So you'll see a little bit more of a gunslinger mentality at that position.
The concussion, obviously, that's when he stopped kind of running. Listen, the Jets were ready to play week 1 against the Steelers. We talked, not that we've got to relitigate last year, because God knows we're all trying to move on from it. But think about that opening drive against Miami, 99 yards, shoved it down their throat. Braylon Allen fumbles at the 1. They were ready to play that game. They almost beat the Bucs. They were ready to play week 1, which to me shows that they had a pretty decent training camp. But I think that, and I want to go back to something I said last week. I think this is one of my most important things for the whole year, right? Why I'm much more pro and bullish on Geno than not to the promised land, 3 layers below that. But just to become good and decent and competent and functional, you've got to have a quarterback. You've got to at least be able to know, all right, we drafted Mason Taylor. We think he's a pretty interesting young tight end. We've got to have somebody that's at least willing to throw him the ball if he wins off the line of scrimmage. And to your guys' points, and you're right, Justin Fields wasn't doing that. Brady Cook couldn't do it. So at least we'll even if they go 5-12 and Geno throws 15 picks and 17 touchdowns and a little bit over 3,000 yards and the Jets suck, which they probably will, I at least think we'll get some more intel that will give Mougey a better database to build out the team for the next year. And that's when you take the next step. You'll know who's a player and who's not.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And Rich, one thing that Glenn said to you when it might have been your question or one of the guys on the beat asked him like who could take a big leap in year 2. He referenced Mason Taylor, who I thought at times looked pretty good as a rookie, but do we even know what he was when you had no competent passing offense? So to Brandon, your point, maybe Geno Smith at least gives you a better chance to evaluate the players you already have in your team, and you have 4 picks in the top 44. We'll get to the receiver conversation, but there's a good chance one of those picks is going to be a young receiver. You're trying to figure out what you have next to Garrett Wilson.
I think everyone who's watching this right now, all the Jet fans, would sign up for an average season for Geno Smith. If the Jets could get average quarterbacking and solid defense and really good special teams, they could win, 7 or 8 games. But the Jets haven't been to the average level at quarterback since probably Ryan Fitzpatrick's year in 2015.
Yep, definitely. When they won 10 games and they lost up in Buffalo. That's the last Rodgers, when he came back, was at least competent. I mean,
there were moments,
but I'm with you in large part. Before that, no doubt it was Fitzpatrick.
So, Rich, in terms of like just Mougey's press conference, he is like the total opposite of Glenn as far as giving you anything headline worthy. But every time I hear Darren talk, I just think he's a really smart football guy. You're around him a lot more than I am. Just give us your sense on what you learned, if you learned anything, because there's a lot of, gamesmanship and posturing this time of year with the draft upon us. But what did you learn from your conversation, getting a chance to talk with Darren Mougey?
Yeah, Darren Mougey's the master of saying nothing. He's mastered, he's great at it. He's only been on the job for a year, but he knows how to, do that really well. So I guess my takeaways from him, I thought one of the interesting points, someone asked him, I forgot who it was, about how, maybe it was me. I even forget, the days are running together. But like maybe it wasn't. How do you base a quarterback how much do you look into next year's draft when making a quarterback decision like on Ty Simpson? And so he said, not really that much. Now, I don't know if I totally buy that. You have to be looking ahead to next year when